Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. Ferrer, your professor. Next topic would be the comparison of development theories. And we will start with the evolution theory of Charles Darwin. But first, we have to define evolution. This is a change over time, or the process by which modern organisms have descended from ancient organisms. While a scientific theory is a well-supported, testable explanation of phenomena that have occurred in the natural world. Now, my question is, how do you think Darwin came up with this theory of evolution? It actually started with the voyage of the Beagle. The date of the voyage was on February 12, 1831, with Robert Fitzroy as the captain. The ship was named HMS Beagle, and the destination was, of course, a voyage around the world. And findings of this voyage are evidences to propose a revolutionary hypothesis about how life changes over time. So Darwin, being an English naturalist, geologist, and biologist, found some patterns of diversity as he traveled around the world. And when Darwin visited Argentina and Australia, which have similar grasslands ecosystems, he found out that those grasslands were inhabited by very different animals, and neither Argentina nor Australia was home to the sorts of animals that live in European grasslands. For almost 5 years, the Beagle surveyed the coast of South America, leaving 22-year-old Darwin free to explore the continents and islands, including Galapagos. So Darwin posed some challenging questions. Why were there no rabbits in Australia, despite the presence of habitats that seemed perfect for them? And why there were no kangaroos in England? So to answer his questions, Darwin collected the preserved remains of ancient organisms called fossils. While some of these fossils resembled organisms that were still alive today. However, others looked completely unlike any creature he had ever seen. So, as Darwin studied fossils, new questions arose, such as why had so many of these species disappeared? And how were they related to living species? So one of the islands that Darwin visited was the Galapagos Island. This is the smallest, lowest island, which is hot, dry, and nearly barren, known also as Hood Island or Hispaniola Island, with sparse vegetation. While the higher islands had greater rainfall and a different assortment of plants and animals, that of the Isabela is the largest island of Galapagos with rich vegetation. So this Galapagos Island is a volcanic archipelago in the Pacific Ocean, a province of Ecuador. This is considered as one of the world's foremost destinations for wildlife viewing. And Charles Darwin visited Galapagos Island in 1835, and his observations of Galapagos species later inspired his theory of evolution. He was fascinated in particular by the land tortoises and marine iguanas in the Galapagos. These giant tortoises varied in predictable ways from one island to another, and the shape of the tortoise's shell could be used to identify which island a particular tortoise inhabited. As you can see on the figure, Darwin observed that the characteristics of many animals and plants varied noticeably among the different Galapagos Islands. So among the tortoises, the shape of the shell corresponds to the different habitats they have. The Hood Island tortoise that you can find on the right has a long neck and a shell that is curved and open around the neck and legs, allowing the tortoise to reach the sparse vegetation on Hood Island. While the tortoise from Isabela Island, you can find in the lower left, has a dome-shaped shell and a shorter neck, just because vegetation on this island is more abundant and closer to the ground. While the tortoise from Pinta Island has a shell that is intermediate between these two forms. So animals that can be found in the Galapagos includes land tortoises, the Darwin finches, the blue-footed booby, and the marine iguanas. On his return home, Darwin observed that characteristics of many plants and animals vary greatly among the islands. So he has this hypothesis that separate species may have arose from an original ancestor. So there are several ideas that shape Darwin's thinking, and one of these were the ideas of James Hutton. James Hutton was a Scottish geologist and known to be the father of modern geology. In 1795, he proposed his theory of geological chains, that according to him, forces change Earth's surface shape, and such changes are slow. And he believed that the Earth is much older than thousands of years. For James Hutton, the Earth constantly cycled through disrepair and renewal, that exposed rocks and soil were eroded and formed new sediments that were buried and turned into rocks by heat and pressure, and that rock eventually uplifted and eroded, that the cycle continued uninterrupted. So those were the ideas of James Hutton. Another was of Charles Lyell theory. He wrote the book Principles of Geography. Charles Lyell argued that the formation of the Earth's crust took place through countless small changes, occurring over vast periods of time, all according to known natural laws. He also believed that geographical features can be built up or torn down. So because of these ideas of Charles Lyell, Darwin thought, if Earth changes over time, what about life? So that was a question that Darwin has to ponder on. Another was the theory of John Baptist Lamarck's. It's called the Lamarck's theory of evolution. He was a French naturalist who believed that organism can pass on to its offspring not physical characteristics that the parent's organism acquired through use and disuse during his lifetime. These physical characteristics can be attributed to these traits, such as tendency towards perfection of that of the giraffe necks, or for disuse and disuse, such as that of the birds using forearms, or the inheritance of acquired traits. So in the illustration of Lamarck's giraffe, first he has the original short neck ancestors of the giraffes, and as it keeps stretching its neck, to reach lives higher up on trees, and as he keeps on doing that until the neck becomes progressively longer. So that explains his theory. Another illustration that Lamarck has given us was that of the crabs. As you can see on the figure illustrated in the slide. Then another is that of Thomas Malthus, especially his theory on population growth. He was a 19th century English economist, and he believed that exponential population growth and arithmetic food supply growth. According to him, a balance between population growth and food supply can be established through preventive and positive checks. That if population grew, more babies born than die, there will be insufficient living space for the people and the food will run out. So Darwin applied this theory to animals. Now here comes the publication of The Origin of Species. It was Alfred Russel Wallace who wrote an essay summarizing evolutionary chains from his fieldwork in Malaysia. Russel Wallace was a British naturalist, explorer, geographer, anthropologist, biologist, and illustrator. He conceived the theory of evolution through natural selection. So with the publication of his essay, that gave Darwin the drive to publish his findings. So what are these theories of natural selection and artificial? But first, we have to define first natural variation. This is the differences among individuals of a species. This is also defined as the genetic diversity of a single plant species and wild. So natural variation is a valuable source of beneficial traits for plant breeding. While the theory in artificial selection suggests that nature provides the variation among different organisms and humans select those variations they find useful. This is also defined as the identification by human of desirable traits in plants and animals, and steps taken to enhance and perpetuate those traits for future generation. So that is actually what people today are doing with varieties of plants and animals. This is more with artificial selection. Then another is the struggle for existence. This is where members of each species have to compete for food, shelter, and other life necessities. So as what we are experiencing today, human species are all but struggle for their existence. We have to compete for food, for shelter, and other life necessities with other living species. Then how about survival of the fittest? This is where some individuals are better suited for the environment. Contrary to this, survival of the fittest is the elimination of the unfit. Now we have the theory of natural selection. This is a process through which populations of living organisms adapt and change. So over time, natural selection results in changes in inherited characteristics of a population. And these changes increase a species' fitness in its environment. So in short, When you are fitted to the environment, then you survive. But if you are unfit in such environment, then you will be eliminated, or the species will be eliminated. The next is descent. We have two: descent with modification and common descent. Now let's distinguish one from the other. The first is more with each living organism has descended with changes from other species over time, while common descent is that they were derived from common ancestors. So, in short, there are living organisms that has descended with changes from other species through time. But there are also those that were being derived from common ancestors, as you can see in the illustration in the slide, that this organism could have the same source of are being derived from common ancestors, those with letters H to N, while those descent with modification are those from A to Z. Now let's look at the evidence of evolution as claimed by Charles Darwin. We have, according to his theory, the fossil record. We have geographic distribution of living things, homologous body structures, and similarities in early development. So according to him, for geographic distribution of living things, that similar environments have similar types of organisms. Looking at the figure in your slide, you can at least distinguish that those animals found in those respective countries with similar environments have more or less similar type of organisms. Homologous structures. These are structures that have different mature forms in different organisms but develop from the same embryonic tissue or common ancestor. Such as the illustration in your slide. As far as the bones of these organisms are concerned, from their embryonic tissue, but they have different mature forms as illustrated. What I mean is they develop from the same embryonic tissue, but they differ in their mature forms. Then another is the vestigial organs, or these are organs that serve no useful function in an organism. In short, it no longer serve its original purpose, or they are useless remnants of structure or organs which might have been large and functional in their ancestors. Example, you have the appendix or miniature legs or miniature arms, because appendix is most commonly known as a useless organ so far, no? Unlike in plants where it is more useful. And for similarities in early development, as you look at the figure in the slide, you have there the comparative embryology of fish, reptile, bird, and human. From that figure, we can conclude that these four species have similar embryology. So as we summarize, Darwin's theory is, for him, individuals in nature differ from one another. Second is, organisms in nature produce more offspring that can survive and many of those who do not survive do not reproduce. Because more organisms are produced than can survive, each species must struggle for resources. And each organism is unique. Each has advantages and disadvantages in the struggle for existence. That individuals best suited for the environment survive and reproduce most successfully, while a species change over time. That a species alive today descended with modification from a species that lives in the past. And finally, all organisms on Earth are united into a single family tree of life by common descent. So that would be all, class, for this topic. And for your activity, by using at least 250 words, identify the strengths and weaknesses of the evolution theory. Explain why you consider those as strengths or weaknesses. So again, thank you, class, for watching this video. See you on the next. Keep safe, everyone.